Love has the power to conquer and destroy worlds, but sometimes, only sometimes, it can also alter the past. This story is one such love. However, messing with time can have unimaginable consequences, and it's really a wonder if these lovers can ever be together. How far can this battle of love go? It's a beautiful day in Kyoto City, and Naomi is reading a book on his way to school. He is a big-time introvert who doesn't even get involved with his own classmates. He even gets all awkward and sweaty to speak up for himself. This is obviously not what he learned in that self-help book he has been reading. That day, he unwillingly agrees to be a part of the library club and goes to the committee meeting. There, after realizing that he didn't have the number of one of the members, Ruri Ichiguyu, he tries to do something he had never done before. He approaches Ruri Ichiguyu to ask her why she wasn't in the group chat they had created. Ruri, however, misinterprets this and gives him her number in a diary instead. Now, if this was anyone else, they would have been pretty happy, but our Naomi is just weirded out. Naomi then walks back home, flexing the book that he had just finished reading in the library. On his way back, he sees a crowd gathering in the street, so he also stops to have a look at what was happening. As a strange crimson light beams from a building they are staring at, a crow swoops down and steals his book from his hand. Naomi, the nerd, follows. Naomi chases after the bird to a silent temple area and finally picks up his book the bird had left on the floor. Suddenly, the world starts changing around him. After some flash lightning and twists, and a $1 million VFX scene, Naomi returns back to the real world, only to see a guy in a white hoodie before him. The stranger starts asking Naomi all sorts of stupid questions, like what day it is and where he is. Naomi, who just doesn't like confrontation at all, walks away without a word. That guy, however, follows Naomi along with the crow, which frightens him even more. Naomi rushes to the train station and quickly catches a train where he finally breathes a sigh of relief. He reaches his destination and begins to walk calmly, thinking that he had escaped. But right beside him was the same guy again, and to make it worse, people can pass through this stranger. Was he a ghost? No one knows. Naomi wakes up. Thank God it was all a dream, right? No! He sees the same crow again knocking on his window as he is opening his curtain. If he wanted to get rid of this nuisance, he had to meet that hooded guy, as he had no choice. They meet later that day, outside a museum where they see a project that stores information from all around the whole city. Storing such large data would require exceptionally large storage, but thanks to the new quantum computer, the data storage has been made easier. This storage is called All-Tale. Naomi and the strange man, instead of discussing the issue, just walk around the museum, and when they reach the All-Tale room, the man just leaves and asks Naomi to follow. They both travel by train to the bank of a river, the same river where Naomi usually spent time reading his books. As they approach the river, the hooded guy reveals that he was Naomi from 10 years later, and he was there to change reality. They stop there and he begins explaining how the drones flying in the city are recording every bit of information for the computer that they just said earlier. And then, without any subtlety, the man drops a bombshell. The Naomi whom we knew for this long was just data that was captured by these drones, and the white hooded guy was the real Naomi from the real world accessing this data. Well, that's one way to shatter a guy's world. At least there was one good part in all of this. Naomi was going to get a girlfriend. That too, with the help of his future self. Future Naomi takes Naomi to the top of the building and begins to explain why and how he is going to fall in love with Ruri in 3 months. Naomi addresses that Ruri was not his type, but it didn't make much of a difference. He explains that they were in love and everything was going perfectly, but like any other romantic thriller, one evening he lost her. They were both out for a festival when a lightning-struck tree fell over and she passed away. He missed her dearly and wanted her to live through that incident, which is why he was here to alter the data that was stored in the quantum computer. Although this would not mean that she would return to the real world, it would fill him with memories of her that he never really had, and that would be enough. He's a simp, but good kind. Our Naomi, despite not having any feelings for Ruri yet, decides to help the real version of himself. The future Naomi gives himself the name Sensei. What a narcissist. And they both decide to shake on their new deal. Sensei had limited capabilities in that world, so he gave his power to Naomi through this handshake. He gives him the crow as well, which transforms into a glove. As for the powers that he had received, Naomi starts training with Sensei in the jungle. The glove that the crow had transformed into gave Naomi the powers to create anything that he envisioned. Since he was a piece of data inside a computer, he could hack into it and access anything, anywhere. The objects that he conjured could be real as long as he used the glove. With these strange powers, he could create water from the air, gems from the soil, and objects out of literally nothing. It was all an illusion though, since human brains cannot be rewritten, but the items could help him save Ruri when the time comes. The training was one part, but Naomi also had to continue to follow the real Naomi's path if he wanted to fall in love with Ruri. So, following Sensei's command, he takes the train with Ruri and does what Sensei asks him to. However, since this is an anime, he ends up touching her inappropriately. Classic. Shortly afterward, Naomi apologizes at the library and hands her a bookmark that she had left on the train. And just like that, their love begins to flourish. They start sending letters to each other and blushing as they get closer. This is all monitored by Sensei. What a creep. Well, technically, he isn't since it's his own memory, but what a creep. Well, at least everything is going according to plan. Meanwhile, the training for Naomi is still on. He is learning to make iron, which is like the second stage of the training apparently, and has also started learning defending techniques to save Ruri. Naomi follows Sensei's advice and tactics with utmost determination. He practices it in his room and even when he is bathing. His hard work soon pays off as he can now make copper from his hand. Don't know how that will help, but hooray! The next day, the library committee decides to collect old books for a secondhand book fair, and so Naomi and Ruri go from class to class collecting the donated books. In the end though, the books are nowhere near as much as they had expected, so Ruri decides to give her grandfather's book. Since delivery was expensive, the duo deliver the books by hand and end up getting so tired that they have to rest on the bench nearby the river. They begin to talk about the books they like as both were book lovers. Nerds. Ruri was the more adventurous type, while Naomi was more into science fiction. As they talk, the world becomes brighter and the air is sweeter. So this is what love feels like. Sensei is, as usual, keeping an eye on them from the top of a nearby building. The next day, there is a fire in school which burns all the collected books. The secondhand book fair ends up getting cancelled. Naomi gets upset at Sensei as he knew this was going to happen, but Sensei explains to him how this was an opportunity to get closer to Ruri and make her fall even more. Naomi isn't happy, however, and uses his power to write the books one by one the whole night. The next day, he packs them in a cardboard box and explains to Ruri that the books were saved since they were in another building. She begins to see the books while Naomi is in her arms asleep. The secondhand fair is back on track, and they collect a good amount of donations. At the end of the day, Naomi confesses that he likes her, and Ruri agrees for dating. Naomi's dating life and his training are going just like it was planned. Sensei is happy with the progress he was making, and Naomi was happy with Ruri. Finally, the day of the fire festival is here. He had to change his destiny. Ruri is peacefully reading a book in her room while they both keep an eye on her. They were making sure not to let her get out of the house that day. But then, the guard of the system arrives. They are only visible with the special specs that Sensei gave him. These strange-looking masked men surround Naomi, making it impossible for him to escape. However, he uses all the power that he had learned during the training. The guards are also inside Ruri's house and have surrounded her as well. Sensei and Naomi were messing up with the system to change the past, which is why the guards were following them. Suddenly, both Ruri and Naomi are transported to a bridge surrounded by the weird guards. Naomi then conjures up his best attack and finishes off all of the guards with one single swoop, saving Ruri. Ruri was safe now, and they both sigh in relief. Naomi hugs Ruri, and as the fireworks are happening behind them, he leans in for a kiss. Suddenly, a cage appears around Naomi and Sensei appears. He then reveals his true motive. At this moment, Ruri was in love with Naomi just like the day she died, but the truth is that she never really died. She was just brain dead and in a coma. He was going to use Ruri's data and revive her back in the real world. Sensei then snaps his fingers and takes the data Ruri away, disappearing back to the real world where the actual Ruri comes back to life. Back at the festival, everyone is surprised at what had happened. Naomi still could not believe everything, but he was broken and powerless. He falls from the stairs of the bridge in front of the crowd and starts crying. Back in the real world, Sensei was able to bring Ruri back. She is lying at the hospital with an oxygen mask on. Sensei hugs her and gives her the same bookmark that had made them close. He had kept it all along. He is happy that everything will be fine now, meaning that it's now time for a classic anime flashback. When the accident happened, Ruri's brain was damaged. However, Sensei never gave up on his love. He goes to university and learns about the systems that can store memory. He works in labs and does various experiments working day and night to make a system that can teleport him into the past so he could restore Ruri's brain. He becomes head of the system where he had been working. After multiple failures and hurting himself, he finally becomes able to go into the past. Back in Kyoto City of the data world, the guards were back again. Naomi, however, no longer had the gloves, so he was powerless, so he runs and hid from the guards to save himself. Meanwhile, the whole system is being erased by Sensei and his team in the present. Due to this, every bit of information in Kyoto City slowly starts moving upward. The structures started floating away, and everything was getting pulled up in the sky and vanishing. The guards were still chasing Naomi, as he, having known that he was just part of the Matrix, is just like a virus now that needs to be deleted. Naomi realizes he is going to die. He feels betrayed and thinks of Ruri with tears in his eyes. However, he still wants to make sure she is safe, so he decides to let himself float along with other information in the city and vanish. While being chased, he leaps into the evaporating sky and becomes one with it. Naomi travels through many galaxies inbuilt into the systems. He is amused to see himself floating through different worlds within a flash. Here, he still could see everything and feel everything, and despite feeling like he was dead, he was very much alive. Then he finds himself in a house-like structure where he sees the same crow. The crow talks to him and informs him that the homostatic system is fixing distortion. In non-nerd terms, the system was being reset. Naomi knows that his Ruri and himself will be erased soon. Although Naomi was powerless, he still tries to use his memory and manifests the gloves. Surprisingly though, he manages to get the gloves, as he had trained enough to use the power. He then uses the gloves' power and vanishes. Meanwhile, in the real world, Sensei finally sees a recovered Ruri. He explains that in the last 10 years, he had made several sacrifices to save her. He leans in for a kiss, the one that he had waited 10 years for, but Ruri stops him. Surprisingly, she says that he wasn't the real Naomi. Before Sensei could say anything, the whole place was surrounded by the same weird guards. Plot twist! This wasn't the real world either. It was all inside Alltale's system. The guards storm the room, smack Naomi to the floor, and begin choking Ruri to death. Suddenly, the past Naomi arrives with his magic gloves and saves Ruri. He fights with the guards with all his power. Ruri recognizes him as the real Naomi as well, and the two hug. The fight isn't over yet though. Naomi takes Ruri on his back and runs to save her from the guards. There are so many in number, yet he doesn't give up. The crow, which we all thought was just a side character until now, helps them with the directions and also to switch places as they run. Naomi runs as fast as he can, but he gets caught near a bridge. The whole place is surrounded by these guards now. However, the older Naomi is here to help. He brings along a car for them to escape in, and that's exactly what they do. Honestly, could have brought a faster car, but let's just go along with the story. As they are escaping, they alter the roads and finally reach a staircase. Naomi then uses his power to make an entry into the virtual world. He asks Ruri to go ahead after she thanks Sensei for the love he showed. The older Naomi had realized that he was just a data as well and had no right to keep Ruri with him. Ruri's reality was with Naomi, not him. The guards were still chasing, and now they are all combined to form a big giant data monster that seems impossible to defeat. Mark Zuckerberg's worst dream. The huge monster is in the streets now, uncaring for anyone on its way. Meanwhile, Naomi and Sensei are on the streets fighting with the combined data monster. As this was all due to the alteration they did in the system, Sensei realizes that if one of them is dead, the whole chaos would stop. All of this mess was because there were two of him in the same place, a duplication that needed to be fixed. While they are all still trying to defend the system tries to overpower Naomi. Seeing this, Sensei decides to sacrifice himself. His Ruri was gone, so he had no place to stay here, and rob Naomi of his Ruri either. Sensei puts himself before the monster's attack. With his last breath, Sensei bids goodbye with tears as they both shake hands. In the meantime, the professor in the Alltale lab overloads the system to reconstruct the Big Bang and recreate the world. The whole world crashes. When Naomi opens his eyes once more, he finds himself in a different world, a place where Naomi and Ruri can be together. This wasn't their real world. In fact, it wasn't a world they wished to be in. But as long as they were together, everything would eventually make sense. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on the notification, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.